You know, we are now live.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mina Mdlala, and I just want to welcome you guys to the Memoirs of tomorrow's session 2. As you know, the first session was so beautiful, so honest, hit my heart. Guys, it was lit, exposed a couple of things. So I'm so excited to know what we're going to learn in this conversation as well. I'm with Miss Leila Akahloun with me today. Very beautiful, as you can see. And we're also going to just elaborate and continue discussing the importance of personal development, self-worth, and value in leadership, particularly women leadership. So, before we get in and start, I'm going to ask Ms. Leila to greet, and then we'll get right to it.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me this afternoon. I'm incredibly excited to participate in today's discussions, and a big, big thank you to Buma and your leadership and the work that you're doing here on the continent and really globally, because I've heard people have been joining in to live conversations from across the seas as well. So thank you so much for having me. It's an honor, it's a privilege, and I look forward to learning and sharing a little bit of my experience in the hopes that it finds some resonance and that we continue to grow together.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to learning too. I'm so excited. Don't be scared if I jump off my seat because of the excitement, but I'll try to contain myself. I'll try my best. And I think because they've already started us off, we're just gonna go right into the first question. And I love this question because of the different responses we'll be really getting. And the first question is, as a woman, what has your leadership journey been like till this point?
So great question, and I'll start off by giving tribute to my mother, actually. So I am the daughter of an African-American woman and a Moroccan father. And my mother from very young would tell me all the time, if at first you don't succeed, try and try again. From when I was just a little girl, from everything, whether it would be tying my shoelaces to love and life and professional pursuits, she would always instill in me this notion that there's power in resilience, and there is a need to continue to persevere in anything that you deem worthy. And so that has been sort of a mantra throughout my leadership journey, throughout my professional life, is that if things aren't going right and I'm noticing, sensing failure, and failure is actually a good thing, it's a great teacher, to keep trying and not to give up. And so that's been a hallmark of my journey. I would say another hallmark is this mantra that there is no reward without risk. If I look back at the places in life where I've had to step outside of my comfort zone and places where I was uncertain of the outcome, that the truest, most, I think, impactful and moving experiences have been where I've known that there's a possibility of discomfort and stepped into that space anyway. And so that I think it's been something that has carried me throughout, and something that I've learned from mentors and sort of senior leaders in spaces where I have worked or volunteered in organizations as well, that really without truly taking that leap of faith and aspiring to better and aspiring to higher, that is where the reward lies. I think there's a great Chinese proverb that says, leap and the net will appear. I used to live in China, actually, when I was in high school. And so this was it's a proverb that the Chinese really espouse quite frequently: leap and the net will appear. And it's just to say, jump, go for it, take the risk, and that is where the reward lies. So I would say those are two philosophies which have guided my journey. And the last one would be that, and I think Mom Oprah, I'm a huge Oprah fan. I don't know if you are as well, but she always says that you become what you think you deserve. And that's also something that has spoken to me as I took different paths and different choices in both professionally, but then also personally in sort of my, romantic relationships with friends as well, that you're responsible for creating the conditions for your own success. And so it's been something that I've always thought about. Okay, where do I think I deserve to be, and then how to get there has been something that's been top of mind as well. What about you? Because you're quite successful in your own right. So I would love to hear. I would love to hear a little bit about your journey as well, because
so
we're
my
here
journey,
it's
been a very beautiful journey, and beautiful because of the lessons that were like literally taught in it. So it's something that has been evident, as I was growing up, especially in high school, with doing the class representatives, duty, making sure. And I think for me, leadership started off as duty, instead of service. That's the image that I had of the journey. So first, like, make sure the class is right, write down the names, that kind of responsibility thing. And as time went on, when I got to matric, then I was the head girl. And even then, when I was the head girl, I think that's when there was a kind of like a twist when you realize that this is more than about the duty aspect, but there's a service to the people in which you are leading or influencing. And like my favorite people in the school at the time are grade 8. I loved grade 8 because they would just be there and they'll be like, oh my God, you inspire me. No, 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 no. And I really loved the fact, the enthusiasm, and funny enough, I met one of them like much older, and they're like, dude, I was still like, yes, girl power, I can do this, So knowing that influence was possible just by being there, it changed a lot of my perspective. So it was a good learning, from just duty to actually realizing that leadership is about service. It's about the people. When it's just duty, you do get tired because there's no fulfillment in just fulfilling a task that has no impact, And I guess for me, I love the point that you mentioned, the two about taking risk and the other one about trying and trying again, because in my own journey of leadership, those are the two things that I discovered that I was not good at all. So that was like something that was very uncomfortable for me. And this now showed recently in university because it continued, I noticed that in my own heart, I had a desire to see spaces that needed help. And I'd be like, okay, so like, how do we, solve this help and whatnot? But I realized that in those spaces, you actually now there's a risk involved. Not only there's a risk involved, but there's actually failure that's possible, So through leadership, I discovered I had a perfection problem. So I was like, oh, so now it has to go back. So where did you learn perfection from? That, unless it's going to look good, don't do it. And I realized that it's something that was in kind of like entrenched from upbringing, because, I'm Zulu, and there are, some cultural stuff where it's like, sit down, keep quiet, look good.
It's so true. It's so true. And our inner critic, I find, at least for myself as well, can be so self-destructive in terms of, and it's designed, studies have said your inner critic is there to keep you safe and to keep you out of harm's way. But in essence, it also, as you were saying, keeps you from playing big and keeps you small in ways which really don't allow your true gifts and talents to be shared. So it's very interesting that you note that perhaps it's in our imperfection where our perfections lie in terms of being able to be of service.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, it's something I'm recently learning and embracing because it was a big thing. It was quite heavy on my shoulders. Like I was afraid of not looking or something not looking right. But recently I've acquired the taste of, whenever you try, whether you're going to pass or fail, you've learned. So I've acquired the taste of learning, and that learning tastes really good because then you have a story, when it went wrong, you're like, this is how it went wrong. See, so you've taught. And if it went really well, you're like, this is how it went really well. So I'm like, actually, there's so much, like, I think in the last year, there's so much in me that is built. Like, I look at myself and I'm like, yeah, girl, hey, you come from far. you know, no, really.
Started
And,
from the bottom, now we're here.
now we're here, like, you come from far, because I realized that the conversations I would have with my friends, well, were from my experiences of failing and experiences of when that didn't well, I tried this. When that didn't work, I tried that. And I was like, actually, my experiences are teaching me. But these are
Exactly.
the tried experiences. And that's the thing about leadership is when you lead and influence, you're mostly doing something in a new space. You're probably trying something new, something that necessarily hasn't been done before. So you're
Right.
gonna encounter some kind of learning, and that's something that I would love women everywhere to know, that if you have a desire and a need to kind of like look at it when you see a situation and you see a need in that situation, go for it. Because it's really been drilled in us that we shouldn't, by society, by culture. And
Mhm.
culture has made us feel
Uh-oh, Mina.
better follower, administrator, and
Got it.
yeah, I might have the gift of administration, which is great, but also I can start something new. I can do it. I'm saying one of the greatest lessons I've ever learned is I too have dominion on the earth.
Amen.
I too, me too.
Amen.
This is not a
Amen.
divided. I too, if I see a need, I too, I can go for it. And that was my most favorite lesson, overall. And I keep on repeating it. It's like you were created also to make an impact. There's no gender when it comes to impact. This is what we're all created for. So thank you for that. And we'll get into the struggles a bit more because the questions do like cover it up.
Sure,
So
sure.
we'll just get into the next question, which is one of my favorites too. Is did you always have the courage to stay true to yourself, your passions, and your morals that you hold dear to you?
So that's a great question. And I'd be lying if I said 100% of the time there is this ability, at least for me, to live in that 100% space of truth. I do
Mm-hmm.
aim, I try and work for the world as it should be, and I strive to live a life that would be pleasing to God in His sight.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
with the recognition that I'm not perfect, but that's the gold standard. That is definitely what I try to do. And I would say, it's very interesting when you step off the path that is for yourself, or um, is where your values lie, and living those values. It's life just it starts to not make sense, and
Mm-hmm.
you, at
Mm-hmm.
least for me in any case, and
Mm-hmm.
and I get completely knocked off balance to where it's like someone saying, hey, like, get back on track.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and it's that those sort of knocks that life will give you to give you the signal, at least to give me the signal that, okay, um you know let's go back
Yeah.
into the quiet time to really
Mm-hmm.
interrogate the little whispers, the
Yeah.
of my own intuition, or my own sort of internal compass to help guide. I will
Mm-hmm.
say that, you know if there's one instance where I do feel that it is important to live one's truth, are in one's most intimate spaces, right? And so as women, I think we often, and I'm speaking now in terms of romantic relationships, or relationships with friends, where we sometimes, it's very easy, let me say, to compromise, to
Yes.
acquiesce,
Yes.
to be silenced,
Yeah.
for the sake of, a facade, for the sake of what society deems society deems we should be, who we should be, or what type of relationship we should be in. And so, I think from that perspective, I'm divorced. I left a marriage where my husband was unfaithful, and so
Mm-hmm.
for as much as I wanted to for as much as of the love that I felt in that relationship, for as much as I wanted to be married and had made commitments to him, to our family, at the altar, in front of God, I think if there's one example in my life where I needed to say, okay, is the life that I'm now being asked to live one of integrity, one of dignity, and one of that which I'd be happy to continue in? And the answer was no. And so then how does that reconcile? Do you step away from something that you've dreamt of and wanted, or do you continue along a path which may be outside of what is best for you in terms of living your values? So it's a tough one, but I think you want to be able to sleep well at night. And to be able at the end of life to look back and say, okay, I gave it my best shot. I lived in ways which were pleasing to myself and pleasing to my God. And if not, just get up the next day and keep trying. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it did. You answered it perfectly, and I think I'll join you there, and think something that when I saw the question brought up, and I realized that I actually didn't know myself until I stepped into leadership. Like, leadership exposed me, and I think for me, I would tell everybody, be a leader. Just be a leader and you'll find out some interesting things about yourself,
Very true.
It's not a space that you should be shying away from, because we're all born leaders. When it said you have dominion, that was like, listen, everybody's got the leadership gene in any space. It doesn't matter where you'd be, whether you're at the school, mining, engineering, science, teaching, wherever you are. The committee back in the neighborhood, that's all leadership, all of it. Sister, brother, aunt, all of that is leadership. And the minute you step in to say, you know what, I'm going to make a change, I'm going to serve, I'm going to influence, it revealed to me that there are things in me that aren't true. That I don't stay and like, okay, I am this person, I'm this in all situations. Some situations did not necessarily bring that up.
They try you for sure.
And it was beautiful because you started learning that you're human.
Exactly.
I'm like, wow, I am human. Like, I can actually step on people's toes. That apologizing is a thing. You can be wrong. Just because you're leading and you're influencing people doesn't mean you're always right. No, that's not how it goes,
I fully agree with you. And I'll say what's important to recognize, building on what you just said, is to surround yourself with people who share your values and who are like-minded and who you respect and who you admire, because they will also help keep you honest to your own truth. And they will, if you've got the right people, not just yes men, yes women who just nod and stroke the ego, but people who will really challenge you in your leadership and really hold you to account of what you say, to make sure that as much as possible your actions are matching what you're saying and what your words are and what your beliefs are. So it's important, that tribe, that circle around you, to make sure that it is as tight and as of integrity as possible, I think.
Yeah, no, you put it there, and I think for me, I always thank God for the friends that I have, because, you'll tell them you're going through something and they'll call you out so beautifully, so wonderfully, like, but didn't you say the other day that you believe 1, 2, 3, 4? And I'm like, I did. So like, what's your problem now? And it's beautiful to know that. I think one thing that we need to understand as women in leadership is isolation is not made for us. It's not a thing. Isolation is not a thing. In fact, you grow so much stronger as a leader, surrounded by people who are leaders in themselves. So it's like just a band of leadership, and you guys are supporting each other in your different ventures, in your different passions, in your different needs that you've recognized. So that's a beautiful, beautiful point that you've made.
For sure. At the I work at the Graça Machel Trust, and one of our approaches to development and impact and social change and transformation is working through networks and groupings of people, of women in particular. But the power of the collective is so incredibly strong. I
Yes.
fully agree with
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And I think something that was ringing in my head, like even before this, and I'm like, as women, we need to really start having the culture of not just being there for each other on historical days, but be there for each other all the time. Like
24/7.
all, every day, 360. Not just show up on Women's Day or show up on a day to commemorate maybe one of our own, or on a day when we're fighting because the world is doing what the world does.
Yeah.
But to actually be there every single day, raising each other up, looking out for each other, just banding in the different stuff that we do. So community really is
For sure. And it also brings to mind this notion of competition, right? Because a lot of times there is this perception that space is so small and so limited to Black women, to women in general, not just Black women, but I would say women in general. And it's important. I feel my friends and I, we have this saying where it's like, if we see someone and they're thriving and they're living their best life and they're doing what they're doing, it's actually a reflection on all of us.
Yes.
It really is. And it's not even just, we say like, she's not our competition, she's proof it can be done. So let's all take her higher and climb with her as well. So it's
yes.
I fully agree.
These are the kind of friends you need. See, this is what we need. When we actually look at our achievements and go, it's possible. Not who does she think she is.
Exactly. Or there's so much criticism that we endure as Black women, particularly in positions of leadership. I don't know if you've been following at all the U.S. Presidential election, but Kamala Harris, she's a Black woman who for the first time is now running for the vice president of the United States, which is it's unprecedented. It's never happened. And we see that for as phenomenal as she is, she's a lawyer, she's a prosecutor. She was in our highest sort of chambers of legislature in the U.S. But there's still this notion that, okay, well, the criticism is still there of, well, she's not this enough, or she's not that enough, or she hasn't achieved XYZ yet, and is she really qualified? We're not quite sure. And we're held to standards which I think are much higher than any other group. Definitely, our standards that we have to achieve, especially as leaders, I think that the bar is set almost to an unrealistic expectation. And so it's important, I think, that level of sisterhood and that necessity to help each other as we climb is particularly important for us.
No, it really is. It really, competition doesn't help us when already the world is not necessarily on our side.
Exactly.
So it only divides us even further, And this will, I think, really tie well in our learnings, as I think we've said in the first question, is what are the struggles that you faced in your own journey regarding self-confidence, confidence in your self-worth?
Yeah, so this damn little inner critic of mine is quite active, and this, as I was saying before, the notions of self-doubt and wanting to keep one playing small to protect is so prevalent. And so, given that I work for Graça Machel directly, I have the honor and privilege of serving as her advisor. And so working for an icon and working for someone who is a luminary in so many respects, it often, there will be moments where I find myself questioning my own abilities. Am I smart enough? Am I good enough? Am I insightful enough? Will the work, can I contribute significantly and robustly to the work that we're doing in ways which are meaningful enough? And so those questions, they play on loop to varying degrees depending on circumstance. But I've had to step away from that and consciously listen to when it's happening and then shift the narrative in my head. So I create a little mini cheerleader in essence. It's like this, go Leila, go in my head.
Yay!
When I hear that, yeah, you've got to, because 100%, to have that internal dialogue to counter what sometimes subconsciously will just creep up. And so that's something I do struggle with. I'd say another thing is this notion of the imposter syndrome. I don't know if you're familiar with that per se.
I heard it in the previous conversation. And I was
like, so it's this notion that one doesn't fully belong or isn't fully capable or qualified, and you're just waiting to be found out, that on some level you aren't good enough, or that there's some level of fraud taking place. So it's quite prevalent actually in people who are overachievers, or people who find themselves in positions of leadership. Quite famously, Maya Angelou, the poet and author, she notoriously spoke about this all the time. She wrote like 11 books and was a Grammy winner. She nominated for the Pulitzer Prize, Tony Awards, very highly respected, very highly regarded, as you'll know. She often would say every time a book was going to be released, she would have this fear that somehow she was going to be found out as not being a prolific writer or a phenomenal thinker, which, it just goes to show that those notions of self-doubt, I think, are pretty prevalent. And it's something that, I myself and a group of other women leaders that we get together on occasion and discuss, and it's like we're just all hoping and praying that we're not going to be found out not to be as bright, or not to be as articulate or as intelligent. So that's something that I do struggle with as well, and it's something that I think is a constant effort to reframe the mindset and to have a much more constructive sort of dialogue taking place in the mind, which, on a daily basis, where we have this assault of particularly women not being up to task, Black women being inferior as it relates to pretty much everything. But so there is a constant sort of messaging to combat, I would think, in everyday life, and it does creep into the subconscious. Luckily, I've got a great, as I mentioned before, the importance of a great tribe and a supportive sort of team. I have a supportive partner, great coworkers as well in my office, who we on a daily basis will affirm each other. And of course, with Grasa herself, she's fantastic and incredibly inspiring, and she will help to remind us that, she says, girls, she always calls us girls, we just got to keep pressing to do things differently, to do things better, and to do things in ways which have meaningful impact. So those are my sort of messages in the head. What about you? Because I know you're in an industry which is completely one. Well, you finished your biomedical engineering degree. You're working now in sort of fields which do not traditionally have Black women at the fore. So how do you manage? What are your struggles or considerations around?
I think my struggles were definitely very similar to you. And number one is doubt. Number one is doubt. Where it's like I always ask myself, but how does this operate? How does this work? How am I the first person to disqualify or reject myself? It's like it's a protective thing. Just don't do it, and then you won't be caught up that you're not really great.
Yeah, exactly.
At that, just don't do it. And and I realized that self-doubt is so it's sabotage. It's a literal sabotage, because not only is it just doubt, but now you doubt your idea. Not only do you doubt your idea, but you doubt that you're actually smart. Not only do you doubt that you're actually smart, now you actually just don't believe at all. Like you don't even actually try to do certain things, So it's something that I had to face and say, well, I'm going to do affirmation. I am great. I am brilliant. I am amazing. I am smart. My ideas are great. This is something that I had to myself now look at and start dealing with. Like you said, that you need the affirmation, and also very privileged that I come from a tribe and a society that is about that. is about saying this, what's your identity? Very, very passionate about identity. That who are you? Believe in who you are. First and foremost, let that be solid, above and beyond everything. Let that be like that, let that not be shaken by anything. So for me, definitely not believing in myself has been a struggle in confidence. And the second one being, and for me, the most deadliest, comparison.
Ah, okay.
Comparison, looking at others. And the thing about comparison is a problem because it highlights what other people are really good at and highlights what you're not good at. So you actually don't even look at what your strengths are, your beauty, your diversity, all these things that you can use to actually do things as you would do them and behave as you would like to behave. You overlook everything that makes you special and you try to conform to some kind of standard, which is it doesn't exist. When somebody produces excellence and it bears fruits, that's beautiful and it's how they do it. And you need to
Right.
find a way where you produce excellence and you bear good fruit as well, because it's different and everyone is different, but do you bear the fruit? And for me, that's the thing that has now been checking all the time, is like, bear fruit. Bear fruit the way you would bear fruit. Just bear fruit. Be yourself. Take time to find out. In fact, have a sober view of yourself. It's my new favorite term. Have a sober view of yourself. Know your strengths, know your weaknesses, know yourself. Because what's beautiful about knowing your weaknesses is when help comes in those areas, you can identify it. You can go, that person is here to help me with this. I'm actually struggling with this. And when you've got places where you're strong, you're like, okay, see here, we're good, we're moving, we're flowing. You can't just, if somebody comes and echoes and starts telling you things that you're not, you're like, what are you talking about?
Exactly.
You
Yeah,
know,
you don't
you
internalize.
like,
Yeah.
you know that's not true. You're just another echo that's echoing. In fact, you're just projecting yourself.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what you're doing. So that's the second one. And the last one, and this is actually another one of my favorites, is thinking that my emotions are a weakness, or disqualify me to be in certain settings. So I was like, because I'm quiet, I'm quite a crier, and we're passionate, happy I cry, sad I cry.
Oh, that's great.
you know that's one of the things that happen with me. So recently I've been looking at it. I'm like, actually, because a friend of mine once said, if you don't know your mind is controlling, right? So I was like, it's pretty much the same with your emotions. Your emotions are actually there to serve, not to control you, but to actually serve. And as I was exploring this, and I was exploring it with my co-supervisor, and I realized that women have such the biggest advantage because we have such a stimulant. When you love and you look, there's certain boundaries that cannot stand because of the love that you have, or the compassion that you're showing, or the indignation that you feel towards something being group of people. Those emotions then stir up and cause your brain to find solutions, make your subconscious work 3-4 times as long. And I'm like, actually, emotions are supposed to be serving me, and I realized that
I totally agree. Yeah,
you're supposed
and
to serve me.
and I think it's particularly, it's some of what makes female leadership so unique and so needed, is that ability to be in touch with one's emotions
Yes,
and have the
yes,
empathy and decision making and be able to think collectively outside of oneself, and to
yes,
have the ability to feel the range of emotions and then come back and make decisions, not having sort of the only the cold rational, hardened
yes, yes.
perspective of things as well. So definitely, I'm glad you're embracing it, because it's so central and unique to us as women, and it brings
Was,
so much
yeah,
more to decision making tables and places of leadership, for sure.
yeah.
I mean, if you think about it as well, it's been well proven that the countries which have now been most effective in their responses to COVID have been led by women. And when they delve further into the research around the decision making that women were having, and this is head of state level, as in addition to Ministry of Health as well, there's a certain nuanced understanding and focus that women bring that speak to to communities and to the needs of people and into our hearts and well-being. So definitely it's
So
strength, the strength.
women emotions, it's a thing, it's a service. Just putting it out there, it's a service. And I was even like saying like to myself, I'm like the biggest, and this is according to my belief, and I'm Christian, right? And I'm like the biggest deed, the greatest deed done for mankind is even called the passion of Christ. Like the whole thing was led by passion. So you understand that the disregard of emotion is such a problematic like image, and we like the bearers of it. And I'm like, look at this powerhouse that we are. And they're
Yeah.
out here telling us not to be feeling stuff. I'm like, never again, you know? Never again. So that's really been something that I'm like, turn the tables, and it's time
Excellent.
to look at that. And
Excellent.
funny enough, we are reaching our hour and we are on our last question. And the last question is how were you able to know and understand the value add that you bring into any space that you're in?
That's a great question. And I would say that is a lifelong answer to unpack. I will say that there's this quote which I love, and I'll read it to you. It's by Elaine Welteroth, and it says, "When you exist in spaces that weren't built for you, sometimes just being you is the revolution."
I love
And
that.
so, yeah, it so speaks to, I think, the answer to that question in terms of there is no one that is you. And you mentioned all the gifts and the talents that you bring. And when I step into certain spaces, it's a reminder that I am here for a purpose, and I believe it's a divine sort of purpose, because I'm working in a space where I believe I've been called to work. And so a lot of times it's just a reminder that just being and occupying the space is value enough.
Yeah.
And that I think is really key, to just to not have to feel consistently that we're proving ourselves. It's only really just existing and sharing your talents and be who you are, because as you rightfully mentioned, we've been given dominion, right? And so I mean, I won't lie, there are moments where I'm like, who am I to be sitting in this room right now? And surely somebody got something messed up, because actually I don't really belong. But look, I've sat in meetings with heads of state and with people who you'd think were the most, from a perception point of view, some of the most learned, some of the most impactful, some of the most powerful. And sometimes the things that come out of their mouths, it's astounding. And it really just sort of levels one's own playing field to just recognize that we're all human, we're all flawed, we all have our deficiencies. And the constant reminder that, okay, if I'm here, it's for good purpose. So I better use it and try and be as, whether it's vocal or not. Sometimes just the quiet leadership is just as important and just as influential as the vocal one as well. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but
no,
I also find what helps with that is a couple of resources. There's a great book called Playing Big. It's by the author Tara Moore. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. Her last name is Mohr. It's called Playing Big. Basically practical wisdom for women leaders, and how to shed or work through the inner critic, for example, how to communicate effectively and powerfully and persuasively. It's a great guidebook, and it's outside of my Bible. It's another Bible that I often reference to help navigate those types of complexities.
Yeah. No, that's actually beautiful. I don't know. I don't know if I can go quickly switch on my lights, because I realize it's getting really dark.
Go ahead, switch on your lights. I'll just keep on talking. I'll just talk to myself, talk to Facebook folks. Okay, great.
I didn't think it would get dark that quickly. I was like, Look at the slides doing the most. So you definitely answered the question there, definitely. And I think for me as well, you put it straight on. And I was telling a friend of mine that I've never recognized in a time like this the power of being yourself, the liberation I feel just by saying this is me. You're going to meet me wherever I go. This is what you're gonna find, and also just seeing the beauty in my thinking process or how I look at things. And I'm like, there's a specific outlook that you have that you normally just you would have, and not having any shame expressing that because it
Yeah.
could actually effect a change, a different perspective to actually honor the God that God created me and honor the fact that God gave me my mind. It's
Yeah.
like an honor, really. Like, I think like this, and everybody else has their own set of thinking. But with that collaboration, you actually have this beautiful picture that you can develop instead of like trying to think like everyone else, but really
Right.
dig deep, find out what are the things you see that people don't necessarily see, and that's what makes it amazing. That's what makes it fun. That's what makes collaboration so amazing. And this is not something I have to honestly say I'm strong in and all the time. No, Shem. It's just these are things that now I'm popping and I'm realizing. I'm like, oh, so this is the route we should supposed to be going. So being myself is actually the best thing I can do for myself, but not only for myself, for my society, for my children, for
Right.
generations and generations to come. This is the best I can give. And the best I can give is don't photocopy. Find out who you are.
That's a good hashtag right there. Don't photocopy.
Don't photocopy. If
Yeah.
necessary, just write with your ink, with your color, your type of paper. It becomes even more beautiful, really. And this is something that my mind needs to get used to. It needs to acclaim, because I'm like, how old am I now? Okay, 22 years of that specific kind of thinking with a couple of months of this particular thinking. I can't expect it to happen overnight, but I
Right.
can see this is the goal. The goal
Right.
is finding out who I am, leave the echoes behind, leave what they want you to look like, and look the way you're supposed to look like. And that has more impact. Like, people can smell authenticity. They can smell it.
Very
We
true.
can
Yeah.
try and like, it's got a scent, you know. So you just best going through the hard routes, learning the hard way. You're gonna find things about yourself that you probably aren't gonna like, but
Yeah.
you're learning. You're gonna go through the hard routes, go through it, be authentic, write your story. And that's the beauty, is as you walk that road, you realize you have a story to tell, and
Exactly.
it's your story, and
Exactly.
there's nothing more beautiful than that women rise up, write your stories. You have a story of leadership. You've got insight from the paths that you've walked, and you can inspire so many that are coming after you, which is a beautiful
That's the thing. Exactly. Exactly.
yeah. And the beauty is it's 6, and guess what? We are done. Look at that. We are on point. Yo, ma'am, thank you so much. I learned
Thank you.
so much. This was so amazing. It was so beautiful. And I mean, I can't wait to see you again. Like, this is a new friendship, y'all. Just so y'all know, I'm
For
broadcasting
sure.
it so we can.
As soon as COVID is over, we've got some vaccines in place. Yeah. We'll toast. We'll do it again. And really, it's such an honor. So thank you so much. It's
It
really,
really is.
really
Thank
great.
you so much to Constitutional Hill. Thank you to Ubuma Leadership. And thank you to every single one of our viewers watching today. And really do hope that there's going to be so many women who are going to write down all the ideas they've had and, eliminate the self-doubt and try at least one idea. Just one. Try
Exactly.
one, and that, who knows what could birth from that one idea. So do you have any last words you'd like to say before we leave?
Oh, I would just say again, to as you chart your own leadership course, you yourself are your number one cheerleader. And so make sure that you, in everything that you're doing, your affirmations, your journaling, the messages and what you're repeating to yourself in your head. As you speak to yourself, every single cell in your body is listening. And so you make sure you're speaking positivity, speaking impact, speaking success, speaking exactly the desires of your heart all the time, and blocking out the noise when possible. So onwards and upwards.
Thank you so much, Miss Leila. Thank you. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. And
Thank
we're going to meet and have another conversation again. You guys might not
For
see
sure.
it, but we are.
For sure.
Putting
It's
it
a date. It's a date.
All right. Okay. Goodbye,
All right.
everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.